I'm not sure whether all of you guys know here that in the past, probably at least 5-6 years before I joined TEQ, we have been promoting Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Cairns and Great Barrier Reef as our major destinations in China. And we position the Whitsundays region, Sunshine Coast, Fraser Coast as our emerging destinations in China, and has been ongoing for the last 5 years. And now we see some dispersal for 4% going to regional Queensland, whereas previously was the number based on, when it's here, based on our research team, the number it could be neglected to some extent, because we don't report on any of the visitor number under 5,000. I think the thing is that we've been in market for a long time in China, and you may ask, Tony and Rita as well. Queensland is reasonably well known in the China market, so we, I think, for the major destinations like Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Cairns and Great Barrier Reef, they are facing different challenges than those destinations in the regional Queensland places. For Brisbane, Gold Coast, Cairns and Great Barrier Reef is how to, all the theme parks and Cairns as a gateway to Great Barrier Reef is also well known. So how to get Chinese travelers to come back to these destinations, and how to introduce new products to China markets. Whereas for the regional area, for example, the Whitsundays, Sunshine Coast and Fraser Coast is a case how to introduce your products and how to make your products aware in the market. From my perspective, from our perspective, we think that we need to do this parallel, not just to focus on, not only just focusing on the major destination, but also we need to look into the emerging destinations as well, because for all the products, as we know, that it goes through, the life cycle thing, and when you go through a life cycle period and you see the growth, and then it goes to the plateau stage, and then how to rejuvenate the destination, and whereas for the emerging destination, how to make your destination known. So in a way, I don't think that I kind of directly answer your question. Yep. But I kind of give some of my thoughts to the floor.
And I think part of that is that whole different regions at different stages of development. Yes. People are looking for something new. People who've been before have done the centres. When they come back, they're looking for something else. And I think that's what Radar and Tony were talking about as well. Rita, you were talking about especially that the next person travelling, looking for the next thing. So I think it's a dual. Like a lot of things, it's not one or the other. I think what you're saying is you've got to work on what you've got today and work on building tomorrow. We talk a lot about China, about get what you can today, but you need to build for tomorrow. And I think that's probably, they're all nodding. So I think you've got to keep it going. You've got to keep the momentum going, because something new today will be something okay tomorrow, and that's what's happening. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay, anybody want to add anything to that one? Okay, now the next lot, Bernie, you copped a bunch here, mate. Lucky you, son. Right, are there any regional breakdowns of the figures that you gave, e.g., like Southern Great Barrier Reef or anything like that you have? That's the first one.
I think the short answer is no.
Okay.
Not down to that level. Grace or some of my other tourism research specialists maybe might be able to help with if there are alternate sources of information, but not in the Nielsen information that I have.
I think even in the TEQ information, getting down to regional is quite tough because of, you say, the sample size, isn't it? Gets you into trouble, Wayne, doesn't it? Yeah. So again, okay, so the answer to that one is no. All right, we'll take a no, we haven't got that.
For the right price, we can go and get it.
We can develop something for you. I've heard that before. How does luxury tourism niche? How does the luxury tourism niche plan, research and book? So the luxury, who wants to take on the luxury tourism? High-end Chinese consumers, that's you, Rena. And are they niche, or was that also in your research, Bernie? Did you have stuff in your research about that as well?
A little bit. I can pass some of my more personal experience rather than research, but it's basically getting online and word of mouth via social media, this thing called WeChat that was referred to earlier today, and other social media platforms. So things like Facebook, Twitter, not available in China, but all the same Chinese equivalents exist and are very, very popular for that communication. And, you know, like most places in the world, the referral of a friend or a TripAdvisor equivalent is very important. I would just add one thing. We get very used to Google here, so don't assume because what you can see on Google here can be seen in China, because Google's sort of available in China, but it's very patchy, or at least it was when I left.
Yep.
It's banned now.
Still is.
It's banned.
It's banned.
Yeah.
Right, so it's banned.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, some of the deals with Google. I mean, one of the big issues for Google is coming through the firewall into China, which is the thing. But Google, at base about 75% of the application doesn't work very well, and one of the key ones that didn't work was your mapping. So if you're using that to tell everybody where you were and how to get to you, coming through the firewall had a lot of difficulty, and in some cases didn't get through at all. So there's only certain applications within Google. It's being relaxed a bit, but there's only certain applications. But I think all the speakers were talking still about researching and planning. A lot of it was online. So research and planning definitely online, and definitely mobile. Was that sort of, everybody said that. And then in the booking phase, I think what we saw was this multi-channel. The idea of, it could be, it's a combination of, and I think, I said to Rena, and I think, all the different operators, if you talk to them, they've all got a website, so they've all got call centres, websites, and a face-to-face potential. Nearly everybody, even Ctrip, everybody's been talking about Ctrip. Ctrip has a call centre with 3,000 people in it. So it's not like Expedia, just click and go. I mean, they actually back it up with website, call centre, and if you book and if you say I want the ticket, they'll turn up at your house within 2 hours with the tickets for you to swipe your credit card with. So, it's like face to face. So I think it's a combination. Is that fair? Did you want to say, Kestra, you were talking about booking and stuff before?
Oh no, I'll just quickly comment on luxury Chinese travelers. The two top destinations is Macau and Hong Kong, and because I've done consulting with Sands China, which owns 7 casino/shopping property in Macau and Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, the key thing that you have to note is that these destinations, they also focus a lot on repeat visits. It's not just getting them the first time, and what they do is a very sophisticated customer relationship program, and retailers are starting to do it themselves without the help of any agencies. Like DFS, they have a deal with the China Merchant Bank for a credit card, and as long as a Chinese traveler uses the China Merchant Bank credit card at any DFS store at any airport, which if the store is there, they get 30% off. I really feel that if you want to boost your return visits for Queensland, thinking of a comprehensive statewide loyalty program may be something in the cards.
Yeah, there's a big thought. There's a big one thrown out. Good stuff. This one's open for any of you, but what's the size of the market from various Chinese regions? So can we maybe take the top 5, do you think? Is this for Australia, I would assume, or for Queensland? But what would be the top 5 regions for outbound tourists to Australia? And from your own experience in your bookings. Rita, what would you want to?
I think the top 5 region will come to Guangdong, and then Shanghai, and Beijing, and then comes to some Hangzhou, and Hangzhou it includes all Zhejiang province, and then it comes to southwest China, Chengdu including Chongqing, and that's called the southwest China.
Yeah. I think if you read any kind of research, TEQ, any of TAs, they'll talk about the same thing. Greater Beijing, Greater Shanghai, which includes Hangzhou, Jiangsu, and then down through Guangdong province, and then Chengdu, which has just made the Tier 1 city. It's the fastest growing city in China, so that's the other one that's coming in, and that seems to be where a lot of it's coming from. Yeah? And Guangdong province, you always get them talking about Guangdong province, but that's really Guangzhou and Shenzhen and
佛山、
Foshan.
佛山、东莞、珠海
Dongguan as well. So it's a cluster of cities around Guangzhou is the easiest way to describe it for the uninitiated, but that area down the bottom is a province. So you normally get people talking about that. Yep. Any others on that? Is that okay? One of the things I think that always comes up, Bernie, is when we talk about middle class, etc., and people look, they see things like 60,000 to 100,000 RMB, which translated back in Australian dollars doesn't look like very much money at all when you divide by 6 or divide by whatever and come back. But actually those figures, when they talk about that as household income, that's after all other expenses, isn't it? The way that they talk about these is actually different than what we talk about, because everybody gets confused about how can an upper middle class person, that money doesn't look like it's very much. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's right. So some of the data that I showed talks about disposable income as opposed to total income. So you always have to be careful and check the fine print, but that
because
that's
disposable,
certainly the case.
because a lot of the stuff from China with disposable means, I've got the house, I've got the car, I've got everything else. This is actual real live spending cash.
Yeah.
So it's quite a different terminology than what we use here. So you look at household incomes and disposable incomes, it's different. So you just need to be careful again about statistics, about understanding what they mean, I think, as well. So,
may I just add on
Sure.
to that? I think in China there are a lot of people, in particular those who working on state-owned enterprises, they got lots of grey income.
yes.
And grey income is not in the book. Yeah, in terms of when you look at the statistics, in terms of disposable income, it may not be high, and you may think, how on earth they can come to Australia, but they have another stream of income.
I saw something somewhere the other day there were 1 million millionaires and 600 billionaires in China, and then the postscript said officially. So and the comment was, you can probably multiply that by 3 or 4. That's the reality of the black economy, the cash and the black economy and the barter economy that operates. So again, a lot of the figures you see, you have to understand that they're government stated figures, which means they're declared incomes, which probably means that they're very far away from reality. Anyway, moving right along. Any intel on the share economy, e.g. Airbnb, Uber?
It's still very nascent in China. Carpooling is starting to happen, but it's happening at the grassroots level because no one is very certain about the government rules regulating this area. But this is something worth investing. In fact, it might even turn into a Queensland campaign, Airbnb.
Okay. So Kestrel's already into it, so there's probably a trend that might be coming shortly.
We just met the Airbnb BD team, I think 6 months ago, and we try to create a long-term corporate vision. I think that's the next step for the P2P, that's mean people-to-people models. But I think that can be happened. But the local deal is not only the B2B can give the service, because we can something change. The first one is that in the before, all the travelers was organized or received by the retailers or OTA. Now it's not. Some knowledge people or some professional, they use their Weibo or WeChat to collect the people. Because I'm good at one destinations, or I'm good diving, I'm good at golf, and I can collect the people. So they change their ID from the traveler to a retailer online. P2B is do the same things. And second one is that the traveler become to a local deal, the local deal services. Because I'm good at golf, I can teach you and you can pay me money. I don't need otherwise, and even no platform. So what we can do is that we, just like Airbnb, is that we created some different service. It's not just a very standard service, but different. Yep. And then we can do the step by step to see it happen.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk today about Weibo and WeChat. And people talking about it. I mean, WeChat, and I think you pointed out, and I think WeChat's very much like a personal network. It's been built by Sue. It takes time to build WeChat because it's about personal network. Weibo is a lot about followers. So you can actually create followers and get, so if you ever look at it, you know, WeChat seems to be, you know, doing a lot more and developing faster, right? But it's a lot harder to get your exposure. Weibo gets you more exposure faster with followers, but is probably going to, and I think Kestrel picked this, probably going to get overtaken by WeChat, because WeChat's a multimedia potential opportunity for you. So that leads me to the next question here was, how does small business get into e-commerce? How does small business get into e-commerce?
Okay, this is just my suggestion. I'm currently consulting with Unilever as well as a few brands on how to do e-commerce. It's not easy. A lot of them wants to experiment with building e-commerce capabilities on their own brand platform. But most of the time, I would ask them to start with Tmall. The Tmall store, there's some initial setup costs. Paperwork is about 50,000. You need to have a 160,000 deposit. It's something like banker's guarantee to open a proper Tmall store. A Tmall store is like, it's verified that this store belongs to, it's an authentic branded store. Okay. The reason why I will actually advise you to start with Tmall store is e-commerce isn't easy. E-commerce is not just about outsourcing it to someone who knows how to do e-commerce. Your staff has to get used to it. So running an Tmall store is a very simple way to help brand retailers get their staff ready for real e-commerce when they start building their own e-commerce capabilities on their own brand platform. But most of the small business, I feel, will never have the resources that is really needed to make e-commerce a success in China. That's why I gave a suggestion just now that I really think that the Queensland's travel portal should actually start selling and marketing products and services from Queensland directly. Why rely on C-Trip, the party industry portal? You spend so much money driving traffic about Queensland to your tourism portal, but you don't convert people there. You assume that they will still remember what they read on your portal and buy a trip at a travel agency 2-3 days later, or they go online to look for a special deal. It's so many other steps to conversion. Convert them there the moment you have them there.
Spoken by a true entrepreneur. And I think there's also, I mean, things like Baicheng. You know, there's now other platforms that you can actually join into. You know, and the other thing I think is to look at joining, you know, with the other activity going on with, you know, through, you know, Tourism and Events Queensland, through Tourism Australia. There's other opportunities going on where you can join up with things that they're doing. But the e-commerce one, I think, you know, is sort of on that back end of actually doing business and doing the transaction, I think takes you to another level, another step. So I'm not sure that it's the first step for people as opposed to maybe the second step or so. But I also think that, you know, referral, you've heard so much about referral, word of mouth and word of mouse. You know, I think the first point is how do you get other people talking about you where people are listening? You know, I think that's a really important thing, and there's simple ways to do that. You know, get them to, you know, testimonials, you know, say it was great, they had a great time. They start telling people, people tell more people. You know, in China you've got this exponential way, and everybody's been talking about that whole way of growing and growing. So again, I think, so with this sort of getting visibility and endorsement and then getting a sale, I think they're the two things, you know, visibility, endorsement first, sale second. Wayne, you had does the research show where domestic Chinese travellers source their information from?
Yes. Once again, it comes down to the 2 year separation, particularly with the language barrier for the older market that's here in Australia initially. It's a lot of Chinese language type newspapers and online sites. But beyond that, once language becomes less of a barrier, they start moving towards English, etc. But it was generally, and the other thing, of course, is they use a lot of their family contacts.
Yep. And I think we were talking, I think last night we were talking with Kestrel, I think as well about this, but you know, it's sort of a parallel thing. There's one, you know, the people who are here are obviously feeding back. They're using the stuff that you've got already. They use, you know, they've got access to the Facebook and the Twitter. So the Chinese community here are actually tapping into your normal communications. So maybe start looking at how can you make Chinese visitors and engagement visible to them. So they see things like pictures, start loading up stuff that says, yep, we've got Chinese visitors, we're here, because they'll start to talk back home as well. So, you know, there's also that source as well as just saying, I just have to go to a Chinese site. I think visibly start to show people, because visibility endorsement can start with Chinese communities here feeding back into China using your normal Western networks. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think when people say, well, I'll go all Chinese, but they do nothing on their other side. So when I say, so you really want me, and then I check into your other side, I find nothing that tells me you really love me. So you want my business, but you don't want me. Hang on, be careful what I'm saying. We've got time for a couple of questions. If there's any questions from the floor, only about one or two before we finish up. Yes.
I saw on your visitation, where people take their holidays, that France was a very popular destination. What is it about France, as opposed to the United States or Australia? What is it about France that, is so desirable for the Chinese market?
France, I can say, even in my mind, France is totally different from Australia and the United States. France is one of the few countries who began their promotion or their brand in China in the early 90s. They give our consumers the message, France is a country of luxury life. Fine food, luxury wine, and also the cultural things behind all these things. The history, the stories behind each brand, and the stories behind each wine. So that's why. But for Australia, we promote, we get the message is Australia is a country of landscape, sea, sunshine, beach. But I know, besides all these things, there are a lot of other things in Australia. You have to find out and tell us Australia is different from France. It's different from the United States. Such as when I promote one of the winery from the Hunt Valley, and I tell the owner, get your family story with your marketing. Because that's a private business. The family business for China is just growing. Everybody wants to know how to keep our family business long to be a 100 years company. That's a story in Australia. So why not? So that's the thing I mentioned in my presentation. That is the story behind the scene.
We were laughing this morning. Interesting one. The other one you always see come up in research for Asia is Switzerland. And Switzerland always comes up, and that's because it's been in the movies. We were laughing this morning. It's been sold. Everybody in China sees Switzerland as a fairy tale. It's all about the fairy tale. It's just got this image of being a fairy tale.
Yeah. I just
It's a
discussed
very
with
interesting one.
Richard this morning why Switzerland, although it's a small country, why it's so popular in China. Because from the very beginning, the message of Switzerland is a fairyland. And also the brand of watches.
Yep.
Fairyland plus luxury.
Yep.
That's everybody longs for.
Luxury fairyland. There you go. And wouldn't that you like that as a USP? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to ask a question about food.
Good question.
How will the market respond to cooking classes and with the use of regional produce? Would that be of interest? When they travel, do they go and experience like cooking in France or other places? Would there be something of interest in Australia?
The food and restaurant is very important for Chinese, but the cooking lessons, unfortunately, I should say, is not that attractive. That's one part of their experience. Only some professionals, they will find this course in a different place, such as how did the French cooks, the Australia steak, something like that. And also, I just want feedback about that lady on the questions. The France, what's the difference with Australia and the France and American, right? I think maybe we should look at the guests, the visitors, the new visitors coming for what, and the original. They already have the experience for the outbound. How they select the Australia and Queensland for the next step, very early stage. Maybe that's the right answer. And also we do the different things in the market. The French in the before is the middle class, and this year in the early June we do a different way. We do the early bird. We plus the France and the Amsterdam together. 5 nights, 7 days. We're selling about only 6,000 RMB. We find that, and we do the research. We find that the people change the mind from A to B very quick. Because that means what's the attractive point of Australia? I think Australia is very attractive to me. The natures, the food, the friendly people. And also I just did the research this afternoon during the conference and share with the Grace on your mobile.
Yeah, yeah.
The Chinese people thinking Australia is the top one welcome the Chinese tourists here. That's also an attractive point. You want to go Japan? You want to Filipinos? No, even American, they see you a banana. You are not very welcome. So maybe that's one point for Australia. So let's look at, and also the food, the organic, and also maybe it's not only the cooking class, but after we can design some of the manual crews that can just eke out to your health. You eat my meal here for 3 days. That's how good for your body.
Yep.
Maybe that's more important than a cooking class. So we just find that what they need, we just feedback them. That's all right. That's simple.
And
That's
I think
my
one of the
opinion.
things we do know from the food is things like catch, cook and eat is very big. So, if you can catch, catching a crab and eating it, or shucking an oyster and doing, that stuff, that's really big, as opposed to, the 2 hour, 3 hour cooking class areas. I just wanted to separate those two out because the local produce, being involved with local produce and then eating it is very important. Kester, you've got one thing you want to add on that?
Okay, it's a very interesting question, and I can see why he tried to combine both because they're actually linked together. Okay, one simple answer. Luxury spending in China, 60% of it happens overseas. That's the reason why people go France. There's a luxury travel segment that Australia is totally missing out from. You have your beach, you have your landscape, but to a lot of Chinese travelers, you are one note wonder. I visited all this landscape, why should I come back? Okay, you need narratives. Narratives are best carried by brands. Australia needs to build up its brands that can be positioned as luxury brand to China. And one area for luxury is food. LVMH in Asia recently bought up Din Tai Fung, which is a Taiwanese chain of restaurants. It's considered high class. And the reason why I mentioned this upfront is this. There's two segments. If your cooking class revolves around grilling food, barbecue and all this, you're targeting the mass family travelers. Those are not necessarily the ones that will come back again. They may visit their relatives, which will account for repeat visits, but they may not be the ones that come back, that can count to come back a second time. Luxury spending and luxury food works very well together. If your cooking experience allows people to participate in it, and it is a branded experience, like this is conducted by Michelin chef, yes, you have the opportunity to PR this, and they will definitely FOC share content photos of their experience to their friends. So there's two layers when it comes to food. Are you going to the mass one or the luxury consumer traveler?
Okay, excellent. All right, that wraps up the Q&A session, guys. So would you please thank our panellists again?
Queensland shines on me, where it shines. Queensland shines on me, where Australia shines.